Yes, y'all. A little bit late. Had to delete some files from my storage so I could actually do this episode. But I'm here. I hope you guys will be here as well. You know the deal. I come on here before we start the show officially. Give you guys a heads up as to what we're discussing tonight. Of course, we're discussing Trump versus Nigeria. We're discussing the fact that Ghana will send almost 50 structural engineers to assist with the Jamaicans' rebuilding of their infrastructure after the hurricane. We're going to discuss they are selling Africans again. One of the questions we'll tackle is, have you read any of these books? You'll see what books, and which ones do you recommend? And lastly, we're going to talk about the fact that we are the gods of the earth. Our ancient knowledge and mysticism is parallel to no other people or culture. Those are the topics that we have in store for you guys tonight. Drop me a one if you're out there. Let me know you're there, as well as let me know that you can hear me on this last Shoot the Breeze episode for 2025. Just drop me a one. Let me know you can hear me. In the meantime, I'm going to start the show officially, and on the other side, I will drop Shoot the Breeze topic number one, as well as introduce any and all of my panelists. So do stay tuned. But in the meantime, hit the like button, share the show, tell a friend, so that we can have a good crowd, a good conversation here tonight. All right? Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Just want to remind you guys before we get the show rolling that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. There are other shows on the network you are invited to tune into.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the Revolutionary Matron on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
That's right. Make sure you're also tuned in to Brother Bakari's BBN Network, the Forecast Radio, Considerate Chi, Graham in the Bush, and Kofi the Black Critic as well. In the chat, D Webb says, can't miss the last show of the year. Peace to me. Peace to Koku. So I appreciate that, Webb. Good seeing you. Trigger Happy 262 Plus says peace, and welcome back to the medicine. Thanks for that as well. I got a one from Black Steel in the chat. Speaking of which, Let me introduce Black Steel this week. Black Steel, how are you this week?
I'm doing good, Koku. I'm sorry, I'm out of the loop, man. What's going on? Is everything okay?
Maybe you weren't here. My dad had died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and I had
I'm so sorry.
his funeral. His funeral was back home 2 weeks ago, and then last week, I'll be honest with you, I came back to New York and got sick because
Okay.
the weather difference, and so I said, you know what? Let me make sure I show up tonight and do the last show of the year, because next Saturday will be a whole new year by then. So I said, let me come back and do it. You know what I mean? But thanks for being here, man.
Okay, yeah. Again, I'm sorry to hear about your father.
Yeah. I guess that was a week when you weren't here or something like that. I can't
I had
remember.
pneumonia. I was really sick, and then I got better, and then I got sick again because say pneumonia lingers. And I heard the show. I listened to the show, but I think I was sick in the bed.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was on the Discord. I was checking Discord, but I wasn't checking the way I should have. So, but I'm back. I'm 100%. But yeah. I'm back in the loop now.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. Shout out to Lord of Slaughter giving the RBG colors in the chat. Much appreciated. Thank you guys for coming through. Again, make sure you guys tell a friend who will be interested in this kind of content, because the algorithm is not going to do anything for us. But we should be having more people in these conversations, more people contributing to Shoot the Breeze conversation. So share with a friend. I'm going to get the email thing going in the new year. Don't worry about that. But in the meantime, man, share the link with a friend of yours, a family member, someone who you think can benefit from conversations like the ones that we have here on Saturday nights. With that said, man, let's get right into it. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 tonight. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says Trump versus Nigeria. What is this about? This came with 3 attachments, so we're just going to go right down the line with it. The first attachment takes us to YouTube, and this video is one you're going to have to watch because it's kind of a silent video with text on the screen. So just a heads up, keep your eyes on the screen, and then I'll proceed to the next 2 attachments before we have the conversation. If you'd like to, just click the link, join the panel since we're short staff. Shout out to Buana, who also had a loss in his family. I'll let him tell that when he comes back, but I know he won't be here tonight. But in the meantime, watch the video and then we'll discuss. All right.
If you like this video,
Okay, that's clip number one. Hopefully you guys was able to read along with that. Clip number two is a short. It's where some fact checking has been done to what Trump has been claiming going on in Nigeria. We'll watch that before we move on to clip three.
Islamic State in Nigeria because they were targeting primarily innocent Christians. But is this true? We fact checked it. The US has targeted IS in 3 different countries, Syria, Somalia, and Nigeria, in the span of 1 week. But it's only after the strike in Nigeria that Trump mentioned IS killing Christians. The US military's Africa Command said the strike on Sokoto State took place in coordination with Nigerian authorities and killed multiple IS militants. But a journalist on the ground told us that one of the communities hit has never been affected by insecurity.
They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria.
The US military strike comes weeks after Trump warned that Christianity faces an existential threat in Nigeria and threatened to military intervene, he says, over the failure to stop violence targeting Christian communities. After the operation, Trump posted on Truth Social that the United States launched a powerful and deadly strike against ISIS terrorist scum in northwest Nigeria, who have been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for many years and even centuries. So according to data, are Trump's claims of Christians primarily being targeted in Nigeria even remotely true? Nigeria is roughly split between a Muslim population predominantly living in the north and a Christian population living in the south. Each dot on this map marks an incident of militia violence, including Islamic State, West Africa Province, and Boko Haram attacks. And the spread of dots across the map suggests that violent attacks, including forced abductions and sexual violence, are more evenly spread across Muslim and Christian areas in Nigeria. In fact, there are a higher number of attacks taking place in Muslim areas, 1,628 incidents versus 865 attacks in Christian areas, according to data from December 2025. This chart tracking attacks suggests that since 2024, the number of mosque attacks overtook attacks on churches. The figures also include abductions. And on Christmas Eve, a bomb exploded in a mosque in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, killing at least 5 people. The data from the armed conflict location and event data monitor just doesn't support Trump's claims of Christians in Nigeria being disproportionately targeted by terrorist groups. In spite of the reality on the ground, Trump seems to be appealing to evangelical Christian supporters who've long condemned violence against Christians in Nigeria. And in November, he designated Nigeria a country of particular concern over the alleged persecution of Christians and instructed the Pentagon to prepare for possible action in Nigeria and threatened to cut US aid. The Nigerian government has publicly acknowledged that it cooperated with the US on precision hits in Sokoto State while maintaining the line that armed groups target both Muslims and Christians in the West African country.
Okay, so that's the fact checker's take. Now, if you look in the chat, you'll see Trigger Happy says everyone seems to be at the point of understanding that this is all about wanting to attack the AES and having a solid base to get this started. AES is fully aware of this. So I just wanted to play what the fact checkers had to say. And now this is an opinion we're about to play that is more in line, I think, with what Trigger Happy is saying. So we'll play it and then we'll discuss it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is actually nothing about. Probably has to do with one of two things. One, an attempt to manufacture a global war between Christians and Muslims. I mean, the way they are going so hard trying to make this happen, you have to be like, stop trying to make fetch. Or two, so ECOWAS is the Economic Community of West African states. But it really is just a fancy name for let's put together these 15 African countries so that we, the colonizers and the central bank, can steal from them easily. And it includes Nigeria, along with Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, which coincidentally borders Nigeria. Now, recently, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso said, you know what, ECOWAS? Go ECOWAS yourself, because we're going to join our own squad called the Sahel Alliance, and we're going to kick France out and take our resources back. Well, the other members of the ECOWAS community, instead of saying, we're going to rock with you, said, how dare you do this to our colonizer? So I feel like this could also just be a tactic to be on the ground and in the region to stir up some nonsense with the Sahel Alliance. Because for other members of ECOWAS, for instance, Cameroon, whose president was just sworn in for the 8th time, baby, he's 92. For those corrupt leaders, they looking at the Sahel Alliance like, we got to get them out of here. They messing up the coon coins. Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré, just took over the 1 year tenure, because every year they switch like who's going to be the head of it, and which is a great idea. And yeah, he literally did a speech where he was like, we're about to be facing the Black Winter because these folks are about to try and come for us. And I know that it's very difficult when you have a bunch of people rocking together to like keep everything copacetic, but don't sweat it, don't fret it. We squad. That's my interpretation and translation for y'all. So yes, Nigeria has oil. Nigeria also has a puppet in power. And if you think puppets in power won't put their people in jeopardy in order to maintain their position of power, then you don't know nothing about power. But we about to learn, because it's time to take our power back.
So that's Amanda Seals' take on what's going on. I'm not the biggest Amanda Seals fan. She got her facts a little wrong there too, by the way, with Cameroon and stuff, but whatever. Different opinions of what's going on here. But I think most Pan-Africans have like as Trigger mentioned in the chat, I think most Pan-Africans see it as the U.S. is trying to find a way, a base to get into the Sahel states and cause disruption. And probably at the behest of France, oddly enough. So with that said, man, I'd like to hear more from you guys in the chat. I know there's only a few of us here, but let's get some conversation sparked up and go in. In the meantime, let me hear from Black Steel, since he's the only other panelist I have today. Black Steel, what are your thoughts on this?
The hypocrisy, man. They're so transparent, you can see through them. First of all, Trump don't give a shit about Christians. He don't give a shit about Christianity. He doesn't give a damn about any of this so-called Christian stuff he's talking about, right? The Christian rhetoric is just to manufacture consent for his evangelical base, right? And that's really what it is, because there's plenty of Christians in Venezuela. He's getting ready to go to war with them, right? I'm pretty sure the people he's bombing in the Caribbean Sea, claiming they're drug dealers, are Christian. The birthplace of Christianity, Palestine, Israel, he's literally supporting and funding Israel's genocide against the Palestinian Christians that have been there since the first century, probably the first Christians. He doesn't give a damn about them, right? But to the point again, Amanda Seals, broken clock, she's right, a couple times a day, whatever. The idea is they want to maintain U.S. hegemony. The United States is a dying empire, right? And one thing we can learn from history, right, is that one thing that empires do when they die, what leads to a dying empire, is imperial overreach, right? The empire extends farther than it can control, right? So they grasp too far, they go too close to the sun, and they get burnt, and they contract suddenly. And we can look at this throughout history, right? What led to the collapse of Napoleon, right? He tried to invade Russia, and it failed spectacularly, and then it led to his downfall. Same thing with the Soviets the Soviets, right, when they invaded Afghanistan. Their defeat in Afghanistan led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, and so on and so forth. So the United States is, because it is in collapse, it's attempting to bolster its failing economy by attacking those nations that are rich in oil, such as Nigeria, such as Venezuela. They want to be able to control and have dominance over these resources. So they go in there with the pretense of, oh, we're going in there to stop these attacks against Christians. And in reality, it's just to place military base within the nation, have a presence there, so that way they can further control not only Nigeria's oil, but also contain the Sahel states alliance to prevent them from becoming stronger. And also, too, we have to realize that a lot of these so-called Islamic terrorist groups like Boko Haram and ISIS, these so-called terrorist organizations are secretly funded and armed by the United States because they use them as a way to destabilize nations. So if your country doesn't bow to us, all of a sudden you're going to have terrorist attacks on your capital, right? This is no coincidence. And Nigeria's president, who is a puppet, I do believe he does have some drug trafficking history within the United States of all places. But they're so transparent, right? That it's not even fun anymore. I don't even know why. The only reason he pretends is, again, to get his evangelical base alongside, because evangelical Christians believe they are the most persecuted group in the world. It's so funny when you hear them talk that Christianity is under attack. You can't be Christian. Oh, you can't say Merry Christmas anymore because it's an attack on Christians. Like, no Christian has been persecuted within the Western Hemisphere in what, 100 years? Not even that. Christianity is the world's dominant religion. And what they consider an attack on their religion is people who resist their evangelism, right? Whenever you say, I don't want to hear what you have to say, oh, you're attacking Christians. You're attacking me for my faith. Off topic, but a little bit on topic about the idea of persecution of Christians. There was a white woman at the University of Oklahoma who was required to write a paper, read a paper, and write a response to it. She didn't read the response. She didn't type like a 650 word limit. She didn't do the word limit. She didn't quote any sources, and she got an F. But she was trying to say, oh, the reason I got an F was because I'm a Christian and I referenced the Bible. And the university backed the student over the teacher because the teacher was transgender and the student was trying to say it's because she was transgender. And again, just trying to follow up with the whole Christian motif, right? The whole persecuting Christians motif. Christians are not, I mean, I'm not saying to say this violence, Christians don't get killed in Nigeria, but are you killing them because they're Christians? Are you killing them because they're civilians, right? This is the very idea of it is ridiculous on its face. So whenever I hear this nonsense, just understand what's coming. I think that this is going to be a disaster for the United States military. Again, they didn't even, based on the people who were there, they didn't even attack any places that had any militants in them. So they're doing little piecemeal, service level. Oh, we're trying to defend Christians. In reality, they're funding the terror groups. But overall, this is all an attempt to control and squander resources. And I hope that I believe the Sahel states are ready. I believe they're planning for an attack. They're ready for this sort of behavior, and I think that is going to end up in their favor. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Black Steel. I'm going to get to the chat in a second, but Black Steel mentioned a crumbling empire. I think one of the differences with this supposedly crumbling empire is their biggest weapon. I think the weapon they have that's greater than past empires is they have the information. They have the propaganda machine paired with the speed for which they could disseminate information. Do you think so? With that said, the ways in which other empires actually fell, do you think that is still in play for the U.S., considering they have such a strong propaganda machine?
Absolutely, absolutely. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it does rhyme, right? The United States is not immune to the long term effects that they're to their damage, right? They're not immune to it. The propaganda. I mean, think about it. Nazi Germany had a very highly advanced propaganda apparatus, right? Joseph Goebbels was the minister of propaganda. They were very. I mean, they didn't have the internet, but they were very skilled at propaganda. So I don't think the U.S.'s ability to brainwash its citizens is going to be any way to stop the downfall of America. If anything, it'll probably affect American citizens. I think American propaganda is really worse on Americans, right? But I think that even Americans, because we're feeling the economic pinches that 2025 has brought, and 2026 won't be any better. A lot of people are struggling. The propaganda is going to start to ring hollow. So not only do I not have to have any, I'm struggling to make it work at paycheck to paycheck. Food prices are going up, right? Now I got to send one of my kids to die for oil in Nigeria. Now we got to blow it out. We got to fight in Venezuela. People are getting sick of it, right? But the problem is that because Americans are so heavily propagandized, I believe that they will direct their frustration not at the people in power, but rather on the immigrants, on Black people, anybody who's vulnerable to their aggression, until eventually they get around to it. I think that propaganda is going to keep the average American from recognizing and realizing who the true source of their suffering is. But that's how I feel. I don't think that it is going to slow down the speed. If anything, Trump is an accelerationist. Trump, his policies and the things he's doing with the tariffs, they're leading to the acceleration of the decline of America. So I think that any propaganda, as long as his policies are in place, is going to mean nothing. It's still going to fall eventually.
Appreciate that, Black Steel. In the chat, there's been a couple of you commenting. Let me start with KW Don 7. He says, Crotch Grab doesn't give two shits about Christian Nigerians. I agree with you there. Trick Abby says, now that we finally got to this topic, I gotta admit, man, I was completely wrong that Trump was gonna go inward and be more nationalist and not go strong on the international front. Yeah, a lot of people read Trump wrong, to be honest. A lot of Slaughter says it's to help France. They are setting up a base and short-stopping military equipment. He might be stalking. Who else was up there? Oh yeah, the Forecast Radio is out there saying what's up. What's up to you, Forecast? Trigapi says it's been three-pronged too. France have secret bases in northern Nigeria. Recently, they called Nigeria to stop a coup in Benin. Israel wants a new narrative for propaganda, and America wants resources. Forecast Radio says that Christmas is an attack on Christians, which is crazy because Christians not even supposed to be celebrating Christmas. And Trigger echoes the sentiments of Black Steel, saying, yep, they are very ready, talking about the AES, but I wonder how they will deal with joint attacks. Sister Lero's out there. She said, peace, loved ones. So peace to you too, Sister Lero. So it's just me and Black Steel up here tonight, so I guess I'm gonna have a little bit of a conversation with him. We might end early tonight, to be honest with you guys, if others don't show up. But Black Steel, just a bit of a conversational type thing. How should Nigerians view this? Because the reason I brought propaganda is Nigeria, as I'm to understand it, and as one of these videos pointed out, is kind of like a two-state state where we have Islamicists in the north and Christians in the south, and they show you that there's about as much violence committed by each group in each area or what have you. But how should Nigerians feel overall about this idea of Trump attacking random spots in Nigeria, maybe not killing anyone, but attacking spots in Nigeria? How should they feel about this? Is this should this instill some sort of, American pride, or or we love Trump type thing? How should the average Nigerian view this, in your opinion, Black Steel?
They should be outraged. They should be outraged that a foreign country is able to conduct military attacks on their land. They should be outraged. They should be up in arms about this, right? This is something that they should not be okay with. This should be something they should be angry, furious even about this. Because, like the young lady said, it ain't just Christians that are, if anything, it's more Muslims that are being killed than Christians, right? But this is a violation of the territory of a sovereign nation. Just think about it. What if another country was to conduct a military strike on U.S. soil in defense of Christians or Muslims or anybody? They would be up in arms. It would be considered an act of war. But because the United States takes its power and it uses power to leverage its ability to basically be the world's only superpower with full spectrum dominance, the ability to basically attack any place in the world when they want to. That's their desire. They don't really care about international law or the rule of law or any type of country's borders or whatnot. So the average Nigerian should be pissed off that this is happening to their country. This is not something that they should tolerate. But Nigeria has its own problems, right? And the people who run the country are very much in the pocket of the Western powers. So there's a reason why Nigeria's land is being used to create military bases to strike at the AES. The Niger Delta is being polluted by multinational corporations. It's because the leaders of the country are bought and paid for. So the government is not meant to benefit the people of Nigeria. It's meant to benefit corporations, Western military powers, and so on and so forth. And this is a problem because Nigeria is the most populous nation in Africa. It is a strategic asset to have under their control because where Nigeria goes, unfortunately, the rest of West Africa could very well follow. So they should actually be furious. But I don't know if this will lead to an overthrow. If there are any grassroots movements within Nigeria that are being used to for the will of the people. And I'm not aware. There are people who are maybe more familiar with Nigerian politics, but is there an opposition party within Nigeria who can maybe take advantage of some of the unrest that the Nigerian people feel? Is there another candidate, anybody? Is there any type of alliance to be made with the Sahel states, with Nigeria? If Nigeria were to go over there with the Sahel states, it could be a game-changing situation for West Africa and probably the entire continent. But I don't think they're organized enough to really produce this type of outcome.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And you pointed out the corrupt leadership. The reason why there's corrupt leadership, this is why I'm very cautious about saying America is a crumbling empire, for this one reason. Even an old boxer still has a power punch, right? The thing with Nigeria and a lot of these African and black nations, period, is that the puppetry leadership or the puppet leaders can always be bought and paid for. And that's the thing. I don't know if we'll ever have the real what's the word I'm trying to find? If we'll ever have the real way to counter that. America, again, like I said, an old boxer still has a power punch, right? America might very well be crumbling, but right now they still have this ability, and for the foreseeable future, to buy off puppet leaders in black nations. So my last question to you, Black Sue, before we move on to another topic, is do we just try to ride this out until we're America's in a weaker position and we're in a stronger one somehow? Well, how do we deal with this ability for America to really outbuy, right, our leadership? What say you to that?
That's a good question. I think what Troy, I think, like you said, like a wounded animal is the most dangerous animal. When you have animals cornered and wounded, they're the most dangerous. So I don't know where to begin, but I do know that an organization that is rooted in Pan-Africanism stands the best chance of withstanding this. The thing is, I don't think we really have to beat them. We just have to outlast them. And I really think that really is the point, right? With your boxing analogy, right? Sometimes they're wounded, but sometimes if you play defense, you just got to wait till they're tired, and you just got to wait for them to make a mistake and give them a knockout blow. So I think really right now it's a ability of, can you outlast this flailing boxer he's powerful, but he's also old. He's also not as steady on his feet as he used to be. Just that's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm thinking like you too. I think the answer, like you just gave, is very much long term rather than short term. And I know that's difficult for a lot of us to swallow because we've gone through this for so long now. When we talk about our parents, ourselves, our parents, our grandparents, etc., etc., I think we really would rather, of course we'd rather, but we would hope or wish that we could do something more immediate. But the only way this is going to work, and the problem even with this idea, is that they can still get their puppets to come in and disrupt, even what a strong Pan-African organization could do. There'll be someone who can be bought. That's the bad part of it. In the chat, though, a couple of interesting comments were left. Lero says, two sides of the same coin when it comes to U.S. leadership. The corporations run this nation, and for decades have always pushed for war, imperialist endeavors, because they seek to profit. She says that the Christian angle is just a clown attempt to manufacture consent. To my question about how Nigerians should look at this, Trigger Happy says it should be outrage and pushback against the incompetence of puppet leaders and American intervention, but realistically, there's appraisal going on and subservience to leadership. Absolutely, you see Nigerians who are praising this. It's crazy. Trigger says if Nigeria had some semblance of organization, the West would collapse. France already feeling the heat because AES. The West would cry if Nigeria had some semblance of consciousness. So I agree with you there. Lero says anybody co-signing this is out of it. Regardless on how you feel about the conflict that is being exploited, this isn't what sovereign nations do. Man, I wish I could have pinned that comment up. That's a good one. A lot of slaughter says Nigeria recently hosted France right before the strikes. This will stop access to seaways for imported military equipment for AES defense because Russia and China has given assistance. He says Benin also has had recent attacks. The Forecast Radio says Nigeria just agreed to have English be the official language. Oh, wow. Didn't know that. Lero says at the end of the day, the reality is that consent was never needed. In reality, boots on the ground. Askari have been paid or used. If Nigeria didn't allow it, what capacity was there to stop it? Oh, look at Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari, shout out to Brother Bakari, who has checked in on me during this last few weeks here. He says, peace and Black African power family. Lastly, Lero says, and that's the root of it, developing the national capacity to assert its objectives or interests. When we still dealing with basic infrastructure, is a long route. Yeah, I feel you on that. We have much work to do. We are behind. We are behind a bunch. We are behind like 8 rounds, to continue with the boxing analogy. And this old heavyweight still has a punch. You know, we're gonna have to really sit down and figure this one out, man. Bakari says, reality is we have never tried to build anything anywhere to defend ourselves. That's a sad reality. With that said, good conversation from everyone. I did want to touch on what's going on in Nigeria today. What happened on Christmas, I think it was Christmas Eve or Christmas Day itself. So I do appreciate that we had that opportunity to have that discussion. But we're going to go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 tonight. A little bit more positive conversation. Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 says, Ghana will send almost 50 structural engineers to assist with the Jamaican rebuild after the devastating hurricane. This is going to take us back to YouTube, and we're going to listen to this brother, Zach Mkwasa. This is his English channel. It says Ghana sends its military to help Jamaica rebuild broken cities. So we'll watch the video, and then we'll discuss it.
By fire, by force, Africa is to come together. Ghana has announced it will send the military to Jamaica. No, not that kind of military. They're sending military to Jamaica to do what? To help with reconstruction after Hurricane Melissa. Congratulations. I always told you Ghanaian people are nice people. Ghanaian people are nice people. Ghana is amazing. Ghana, you have now freedom. If you've never been to Africa, you want to visit one country first, you can go to Ghana. Hands down. Tanzania, lovely place too, but Ghana, no doubt. So Ghana has announced it will send military engineers, not just people, military engineers to Jamaica at the end of the year to help with the reconstruction of the country after Hurricane Melissa. So what happens is very simple. Jamaica is right here. You can see the distance between Jamaica and Ghana. It's very far away, but the hearts are connected because it is said that a lot of people actually from Jamaica, their ancestry goes back to Ghana and the neighborhood. Okay, so the connection is very alive. Matter of fact, when you go to Ghana, you go to some of the markets in Ghana, and you go to Jamaica, they look very, very similar. Very similar. So what happened? Hurricane Melissa, this one here, struck Jamaica in October 2025. Big hurricane causing a lot of damage, widespread destruction, particularly in the areas like Black River. It was bad. I always have my people in Jamaica, Wagwan, mi boss, I see you. I had to call them to find out, make sure they're good. I was actually personally planning a trip to Jamaica at the end of the year, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for the next year. But it's beautiful to see a black country support other brothers somewhere else in the world. Well, the announcement was made by the president when? On the 80th anniversary of the Manchester Declaration. So the 5th Pan-African Congress. The president of Ghana made a declaration on the 80th anniversary of the Manchester Declaration. And you're certainly asking, what is Manchester Declaration? So in order to understand this, we're going to have to rewind and go back to time. October 1945, what happened was many black people across the world went to meet in Manchester. Liberation movement and frontline people had a discussion. So in total of 90 delegates, including 26 from Africa, plus representatives from the Caribbean, from the US and Britain, black people came together in Manchester in 1945 to have a discussion. What was the declaration about? The declaration called for an immediate end to colonial rule in Africa and the Caribbean, demanding self-determination and independence. So black people in 1945 in Manchester had a meeting and they discussed. They asked for an immediate arrest to colonial rule in the Caribbean and Africa. You can see how connected we are. Can you see how connected we are? I mean, you don't see it very much because you are the Africans, we Caribbean, we American, we African American, we African American. You see how connected we were back in time. It's just this generation that's stupid. Now, it's people of today that are very stupid, fighting over stupid things. Oh, we eat corns with cheese. We eat eggs with honey. We eat... What kind of stupidity is this? I don't understand. In 1945, your grand-grandfather went to sit down in Manchester where they had a discussion. Over 80 delegates from all across the world, black people, from Africa, from the Caribbean, from the United States of America, from Britain, asking for the liberation of Africa. So Ghana was basically celebrating the 80th year of that situation. Just a quick list of people that were there so you can remember. This man right here, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. This man here, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya. There was Hastings Banda from Malawi. Obafemi Oluomo from Nigeria. Peter Abrahams from South Africa. Amy Jake from Jamaica. W. Du Bois, African American. And many other people. They all went together to find one solution for everybody. And I know a lot of people have never heard about this. And I'm not going to blame people for not knowing because, as time goes, people tend to focus on things that are actual. And sometimes it's very sad. And we're here for that. We're here for the union. We're here so we can all learn. Okay, so let's get back on track. Basically, Ghana is sending 48 engineers to Jamaica to go and support. Houses are broken. There was a flood. People were unalived. People are in pain and sad. And 48 engineers not coming from a European country, but from an African country. It's a beautiful thing. Okay, these are not drug dealers, okay? They're not going over there to try to, no, not at all. These are engineers, masons, carpenters, and other skilled workers. Their mission is to construct makeshift shelters, support infrastructure recovery for displaced Jamaicans. Isn't this beautiful? I think this is very beautiful. These are the type of things we need to hear from each other. We need to support one another. From Africa to the Caribbean to the United States of America, we are one people, my brother. It's just this generation that messed up, really. Let me put it this way for you. Back in time, I'm going to show you. Back in time, Ghana and other African nations in 1957, after independence, this man right here, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, provided funding, meaning money, training, and diplomatic backing to liberation movement in countries in Africa, such as Guinea, Congo, and South Africa. My South African people, did you hear me? Ghanaians with this man, Kwame Nkrumah, back in time, in 1957, provided funding for the ANC, food, training, and backing for these countries. You, Congo, and Guinea. Why isn't that done today in 2025? Let's go to Tanzania, okay? Tanzania back in time, I know Tanzania today is different, but Tanzania back in time was different. Tanzania of Julius Nyerere, this man here, Mwalimu, the professor. Tanzania hosted exile liberation groups. I mean, back in time, when some African countries were being freed, other Africans were still in the colonies. Some Africans are free of colonialism, other Africans are still juggling with them. Now, whilst other Africa was still juggling, some Africans were helping other Africans. Tanzania did a lot of work from 1960 to 1970. Julius Nyerere, this man here again, okay? What they did was they hosted liberation groups. People from the ANC of South Africa slept in Tanzania. Okay, people from Frelimo, Mozambique slept in Tanzania. People from ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe slept in Tanzania. They offered them base, training camps, and political support. That's what Tanzania for African people. Let's go again. Look, let's go to the north. Algeria. You see this country here? Algeria. They're not necessarily black like us. Obviously, you're going to find some black Algerians, but not all of them are dark skinned. Algeria, back in time, in the 1960s, after independence, Algeria became the hub for revolutionary movement. Algeria. I know today people say, "Oh, we're not black with this." No, back in time, they were the hub of revolutionary movement. They were offering weapons, guns, training, diplomatic recognition to groups fighting colonialism. Imagine giving diplomatic recognition to groups fighting colonialism in Angola, Mozambique, and South Africa. I think it's beautiful. Another instance of an African country helping another. Look at this country right here. It's called Zambia. Zambia is in a dire need of electricity right now for some reason. Zambia uses hydroelectric means, and currently the dam is quite dry because there's no rain. So they need the rain to have water so the turbines can turn and have electricity. And because of that, Zambia has to import electricity. From who? From Africans. Now, Zambia is importing electricity from Mozambique, from Malawi. It's all going through Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is using its platform to transfer the electricity from Malawi and Zimbabwe to Zambia. That is the beautiful thing we want to see among Africans. The Ubuntu. Ubuntu is not just Africa. Ubuntu is black. Ubuntu is in Jamaica. Ubuntu in Trinidad. Ubuntu all over the world in America. This is what we want to see. In the meantime, Kenya sent military in Haiti. You know what happened? Yeah, Kenya sent military in Haiti to go fight Haitians who are fighting for themselves. Basically, you need to understand the history of Haiti to comprehend. Haiti has been segregated for the longest time. Haiti is the first free black nation in the world, and they did not like that. They freed themselves by fighting the colonialists. Haitians were taken from Africa by force, like most of the people, by the French. But their colonialism was brutal, bad. One day they came together, had a prayer as Haitian, and they stood against the colonialists in the island. You see the island of Haiti? They fought against the French. They destroyed the French. After they won that war, all of the countries of the West said, you know what? We're going to put you to the side. We're going to make sure we asphyxiate you and you're going to cry. And if you don't subdue yourself to us, we're going to come, all of us, and destroy you. Haiti was pushed to the side in a way that they wanted to discourage all countries in the world, all black countries, from trying to free themselves. They wanted to make an example out of them, an example, and that's what it was. So nowadays, Haiti still goes through very difficult time, and Kenya sent soldiers to go fight the very same Haiti that are trying to free themselves. Let me put it this way for you. In Haiti, there's 12 families. 12 families that are the richest families. They control telecommunication, they control transportation, they control electricity, they control fuel, they control everything, food, you name it. They control it. And these 12 families are not black. The majority of the people in the island are black like you. But the people that are controlling the economy are not. Some of them come from the Middle East and from the country you don't name. Now, guess what? They're trying to protect their presence. Guess who they sent to Haiti? America wanted to go initially. Then they thought about it. They're like, no, we can't go to Haiti and send soldiers again because we've done that in the past. It didn't go well. If we send soldiers again, the world will say that we're trying to play the police of the world. How can we go into Haiti, stop them from developing, but without we having to deter or to dirty our name? Let's just use other black people. They went to Kenya, had a discussion. They offered them money to go over there and fight Haitian. And Kenyan soldiers are in Haiti. You need to ask yourself a question now. And this is bad. It's very sad. And from what we heard, as soon as Kenyan soldiers get to Haiti and learn about the history and understand what's happening on the other side, they stop fighting each other. Let me know if you know about this. Ghana sending soldiers in Jamaica to go and support them. I think this.
Good stuff there. It's particularly good that he in that video he actually broke down instances of Pan-Africanism, which has me thinking of a follow-up question. I'll drop that in a few minutes. First, shout out to Daily Affirmations by Pauline saying good evening. Good evening to you, my dear. Trigger Happy 262 Plus says that Obadeli Camben has been behind the DOOR, the door, decade of our repatriation, and that's getting more enforced by the government, Ghanaian. That proves a point to me too, by the way. I'll talk about that in a few. Trigger says that Mahama has been great so far, but He wishes Ghana as a whole would be less hot and cold about the AES, but Mahama has a lot of positives. Last Sister Raw is out there. She says greetings to all of us, including me and you guys in the chat. So shout out to Sister Raw. Good to see you, as always. Again, Shooter Breeze topic number 2 says Ghana will send almost 50 structural engineers to assist with the Jamaican rebuild after the devastating hurricane. So I think it's a wonderful thing, and I think it's wonderful on a couple of levels. I think when you think about the children in Jamaica after this devastating hurricane, which, by the way, that region is prone to hurricane damage damn near every year. But when they see that and they see these Africans come from Ghana, and like Zach mentions in the video, a lot of folks in Jamaica can trace their lineage back to the area that's now called Ghana. When they see that, and it inspires them to look up, well, where's Ghana? Who's these Ghanaians? I think that's a good bridge, a good educational bridge. Hopefully, Jamaicans will build around these 50 engineers and not just have them as some anonymous 50 people, but I kind of treat them almost like heroes in a sense. I think that could go a long way in a country like Jamaica that already has a good amount of consciousness, understands their Africanness, but might need to tighten up on some areas of that because we know of all the, the other things that go on in Jamaica and stuff like that. But I think it's a good thing. Black Seal, what are your thoughts on Ghana sending 50 structural engineers to Jamaica?
This is the type of thing that I like to see for Black people, for African people, right? We need to be able to depend on each other because we all we got. There's nobody coming to save us but us. So this is a good thing. This is an excellent thing. It's like you said, it's something young people need to see. Black African people need to know that we can count on each other, right? There's a very strong, very powerful propaganda apparatus at work that teaches African people to be distrustful of each other. You can't count on each other. Black men ain't nothing. Black women ain't nothing. So when you see this type of thing in reality, this proves that everything they're saying is a lie. That Black people not only can be dependent on, but that we are competent enough. We're not sending sending military, sending engineers. Engineering requires a level of intelligence, intellect that our enemies say we don't have. So to see this in action is even better because now you have Black men, Black women coming together, working to improve a majority Black nation. And they may not say it, they may not ever speak this, but this is something that it needs to happen more often. Not being done on a military thing or on behalf of European powers like with the Kenyans in Haiti. This is being done by an African nation willing to help, not trying to use force or weaponry, but using their intellect and their skill to improve and help them rebuild after this disaster. And this can help foster other links throughout the diaspora, right? This is so much for those people who say Pan-Africanism is dead. All right. Apparently, the dead is still it must be like Lazarus because it's still alive and kicking and doing what it needs to do. So I definitely think it's a very positive step and a step in a good direction.
Before you go, Black Steel, let me just ask you this. This is my follow-up question I had from the video. You brought it up, Pan-Africanism. Is it the case that, because you kind of said this just now too in a sense, is it the case that African people, Black equals African people, are naturally Pan-African if you remove the propaganda machines that are used against us, are used to divide us and to conquer us, are we naturally, do you think, are we naturally Pan-African people?
I don't think. Hmm. Hmm. I think that black people are naturally kind. I think we're very open to other people, and I think that that has been used against us, right? But I think that unless, I think that the propaganda has to take place early. So, but to your point, I do think there is something that is natural within us about cooperation and sharing, working together. The ideas of Ubuntu, these ideas don't just happen in a vacuum, right? And I think that comes out of our shared cultural heritage. So I do think that our history does kind of lean itself towards what you're saying, right? That black people are naturally Pan-African, but I think it's more connected to just our we see each other, we see ourselves within each other, right? When we see other black people, we see ourselves. And I think there's a lot of resources that are used to kind of kill this natural tendency in us to cooperate and share with each other.
That's well said, Black. See, I kind of feel along those terms, quite along the way you're thinking as well, in that those ideologies like Ubuntu, for the white man to come into Africa and pick up on that, tells you that it was something really ingrained within us. I think the one thing that played against us, they exploited the idea of different people groups on the continent. I'm a part of a people group, you're a part of another people group. If we come into some conflict, I have prisoners of war, from your group, etc. And they kind of exploited that. And people don't talk about it enough. But the introduction of the Maxim gun and all that stuff, where they start playing those games of, hey, we got these guns here. Oh, by the way, they got guns too. You better get them before they get you. I think we don't realize just how hard hitting and heavy that has been on our psyche since our encounter with these folks. And I do believe that we tend to see ourselves in one another outside of the propaganda and these tactics that are being used against us to divide us and conquer us. If only we could wake up to these tactics. I feel like we're getting slower and slower at recognizing these tactics, and therefore we're becoming more and more divided. In the chat, Trigger Happy 262 Plus says, our ancient history has already shown we gravitate towards each other. Kwame Ture argued that the continent was naturally evolving to a stage of unity until external forces interrupted us. Earlier, Lord of Slaughter said Muhammad also named us in the diaspora the 17th region of Ghana. Very interesting to hear that. Lord of Slaughter also says, when we see stuff like this with the engineers, it becomes something that we can demand from aspiring politicians. Yeah, again, though, I agree with that, but I also think we have to be very deliberate with these types of things. I think what we tend to do is we'll tend to say, okay, 50 engineers came from Ghana. They come in, they do whatever they can, and then almost quietly they return to Ghana. I think what we got to do is be more intentional. And when these brothers and sisters come from the continent, and vice versa, by the way, we should definitely create an atmosphere around that, an atmosphere of education and understanding and, things of that nature. So I hope that the government in Jamaica does that. And I also hope The Ghanaian government kind of does that too. Introduce the people to Jamaica. And I say that intentionally. I saw a video this week where I can't remember which part of the continent the lady was from. I can't remember which country it is, but she was from Haiti. And she was asking continental Africans, have you ever heard of Haiti before? And I'll be honest with you, it kind of surprised me a little bit. They're like, nah, we don't really know. We don't really know nothing about Haiti. And then she says, well, do you know about Jamaica? And I was like, yes, we know Jamaica. She's like, well, we're in that region. And that's an old kind of a joke that you hear Caribbean people in America talk about, how we're all just considered like Jamaican or some variation of Jamaican, as opposed to understanding that we're all from these different, 16, 17 different nations in the Caribbean. But I was really surprised that a lot of the average continental African, wherever she was, wasn't aware of Haiti. And this is what I'm saying, where we got to make things deliberate. We have to make things deliberate. Make sure there's a cultural exchange or cultural reacquaintance. Because if you look at a lot of what Jamaicans do culturally, or what even Bahamians do culturally, it points back to Ghana. And we got to make these things events, Anthony McPhail, haven't seen you in a minute, brother. Hope all is well with you. Anthony's in the chat. He says, peace, Koku. My condolences for your loss. Peace to the chat. I appreciate that, Anthony. Good to see you. Hope all is well out there. Trigger Hobby 262 Plus says, I know the video you're talking about. If I could take a guess, Haitians are way more known in the Francophone countries than Anglophone countries. She was in Tanzania. Oh, she was in Tanzania in that video. Oh, okay. 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 All right. Trigger goes on to say, even like Zouk music or general Francophone Caribbean music is very popular on the French side of the continent. All right. That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, I didn't realize she was in Tanzania. That's a little, I'm not saying that they're different people or any such thing as that, but it's on the other side of the continent. I could kind of get down with that. All right. Black Steel, before we move on, is there any last thoughts you have here, or should I just go to the next topic?
You know what? I think we can move on to the next topic. I think we get so few positive things. This is a great topic to hear. But yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Yes, sir. All right. With that said, let's go to Shooter Breeze topic number 3. Let me get a little bit more of you guys in the chat. I know Trigger Happy is active and a lot of slaughter. Let's get a little bit more of you guys in the chat, giving you your input to these topics. Shooter Breeze topic number 3 says, they are selling Africans again. They are selling Africans again. This comes with a link that takes us back to YouTube again. Make sure you guys can see my screen. You can. So this is a short or a reel or whatever they call it now. I'll play it. If I have to play it twice, I'll play it again. But the caption here says they're selling Africans again in a different way. Let's tune in.
Today, let me tell you a truth that is painful, necessary, and very familiar. When the Omani slave trade ruled the East African coast, it didn't survive on Arab ships alone. It survived because powerful African chiefs in the hinterland captured the people and sold them to the coast. These were fellow African leaders who sold their own fellow Africans as slaves. They include chiefs like Makanjira from the Yao community. Also part of this slave-selling clique are Mirambo and Fundikira, Nyamwezi rulers. Even Baganda kings at certain periods sold slaves. These rulers, plus numerous other rulers and warlords, traded human beings for guns, cloth, and political influence, plus other commodities. Slave trade only worked because some African leaders enabled outsiders to profit from African bodies, African labor, and African life. Now, If you think that this is ancient history, you have another thing coming. Today, nobody is chaining Africans and dragging them to the coast, but the same pattern continues in new forms. Some leaders use the police to kill their own people in order to hang on to power. Some leaders sign deals that rob Africans of their minerals, their land, and their water, plus their future. Some leaders allow foreign companies to drain entire communities while giving crumbs to the people. It's we, the Africans of today, have a choice. We do not have to accept being sold. Nope. We do not have to accept leaders who trade our dignity, our lives for their benefits. We can refuse. We can expose. We can resist. We can organize. We can win. The new chains are invisible, but the courage to break them must be visible. Remember those ancient rulers who sold fellow Africans. And remember how many lives were destroyed because people were treated as goods. That must never, ever happen again. This generation of Africans must stand up and say, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Africans will not be sold. Never again.
So the reason I put this separate, I had a mind to connect it to the earlier prompt where we discussed puppets in Africa, puppet leadership in Africa. But I decided to pull it to its own prompt because there's a very significant question I have to ask here. And but first, it's a follow-up question. Actually, I have about two of them. But there's a very significant question to ask here. But first, let me speak on what I just heard. I agree with this brother in that in the present day, we have the knowledge now, we ought to have the knowledge now, to get organized and to resist our people being sold into slavery, whatever slavery you want to talk about, right? So I agree with that brother there. I can't talk about the rest until I hear from Black Steel, and then I could bring up the other part. But Black Steel, what are your initial thoughts on what you just saw?
I don't really like his analogy, if you ask me. I understand what he was trying to say, but I don't like the analogy that he was trying to make. And this is something that I often dislike because I hear many racists and white supremacists making the same analogy. Africans sold other Africans into slavery, right? So it wasn't really the Europeans' fault, it was really Africans' fault because you sold each other into slavery, right? Your own leaders did this and so on and so forth, right? And I think this statement lacks a lot of nuance, right? And I think that the way they're framing it, just like they frame the whole statement about black on black crime, right? As if black people are extraordinarily violent, right? Look at you, you're killing your own people, and then you ignore the fact that most crime is intraracial, right? We don't refer to white people. That white dude who just literally sat up there and shot his wife and killed her because she asked him to change the channel from his football game. We don't call that white on white crime, right? These dudes shot his wife, killed her, shot his stepdaughter in the head, didn't kill her, but she's in the hospital now. We don't say that's white on white crime. But the language that is used sometimes bothers me. So when we say Africans sold each other, understand Africa has never, ever been a unified community, right? You may have Ibu selling Yoruba, you may have Mandinka, but because Africa in their mind is a country, right? So Africa is not separate nation states. One nation waging war against other nations. We don't call World War One white on white crime, even though every nation involved, from England, France, Germany, was European, right? We don't call the world wars European tribal wars, but that's really what they are, right? But I just noticed this language is used when it comes to the African people as if we are the ones who manufacture our trauma the most, right? So I don't like that type of language because it's historically inaccurate and it lacks the nuance required. When we study history, right, we understand that the Northmen, the Vikings, were kidnapping Europeans from Ireland and selling them in the slave markets of Constantinople, right? We don't say, oh, that's white on white violence. You understand that each of these individual Europeans were a separate nation state, to have religion, so on and so forth. And we can understand and respect that. But Africans, we just all one big nigga, basically. So I understand the point he's trying to make, but at the same time, I take issue with the verbiage that he's using. That's just my point. But just overall, yeah, we do got to hold these leaders of these African nations accountable, but because of the way that they are selling out to the Western powers. I agree with that, but I just don't like the way he kind of framed it. Just my thoughts on it.
No, and I knew exactly what you were going to say. This is why I left the space for you to speak, and then I'll come back with the other part of what I was going to say. I agree with you 100%. I don't like the framing that it was just Africans just started the slave trade and blah, 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 and forced these other people to build ships and take out insurances and all this old shit, right? But my follow-up question for this problem, the reason why I made it a separate thing, is my question to Black Seal, to chat, everyone listening, is have we really dealt with those who were traders? Now, I know people will say a lot of those people got hemmed up in the slave trade themselves, but we do know that there are Africans on the continent who benefited, and they're still in that top 1% or whatever on the continent. Have we ever really dealt with that sufficiently so that we could then move on as a people, understanding what the wrongs that we got ourselves caught up in the past? Again, not to say that we created the problem, and not to say that we don't understand that some people was held at gunpoint, basically, to be complicit. But have we ever really dealt with that group, and how they actually dealt with us concerning what their ancestors were, had taken a part of? Do you think that's important, Black Steel and chat, for us to actually, I guess, use a Mandela kind of term, that truth and perhaps reconciliation with that group? Black Steel, what are your thoughts on that?
No, we haven't. No, we have not ever made any type of reconciliation with the comprador class, the trader class within those African societies. No, we never had. And you know what's so funny? I was watching a mini series called The Book of Negroes. I don't know if you ever saw it before, but it talked about it talked about this black woman who had been kidnapped as a child from Sierra Leone. She was brought over to the American colonies prior to the American Revolution. She joined up with the Loyalists, but she was captured in the book. In the miniseries, they showed her being captured by other Africans, and there was a young man who helped capture her. And then she turned around, and on the slave ship, he was in chains also. So what happened in many cases that a lot of these people who were working with the Europeans to help enslave their fellow African people, or Africans of different tribal groups, or Africans of different nations, many times they would then be turned around and enslaved themselves. So a lot of what happened is that they would be placed on the ships as well. Like, okay, well, we got this person, this person, this person, but we short a few. So go ahead and grab that boy who was helping lead us to the village. Grab him too, throw him on the ship, and we'll reach our quota. So a lot of times these Africans who were working with the Europeans found themselves in chains as well. And then when you had these Africans, when the Europeans came to colonize them, they worked with the colonizers as well. So we've never really had anything to account for. Hey, you work really hard to undermine the sovereignty of your nation, the sovereignty of your people, and you got to call that into account. So no, we've never really had that conversation. I think that many times we don't want to have this conversation because a lot of times we say, hey, you're taking the focus off of what the European has done. But the problem is we are plagued by traitors in our midst. And the only reason that the European is as strong as they are is because there's so many incentives and there's no punishment. There's nothing to disincentivize an African person from shitting on another African. Look at what's going on with Nicki Minaj, right? There's nothing. She's getting paid for the stuff she's doing. She's benefiting from this. There's no punishment. She wasn't punished when she mocked Malcolm X on that looking ass niggas thing she did, right? So we've never really dealt with the people within our midst. The man who betrayed Fred Hampton, William O'Neill, he ended up committing suicide. Like he had to kill himself. Eldridge Cleveland, who betrayed the Black Panthers. These people go on to live long lives and economic, and they would get paid for it. So we got to do a better job of sanctioning the people who move against us. We got too many people who want to speak up for them and they want to talk about both sides. And I think that sometimes we got to look at these situations in black and white. So that's how I feel about it. There's never been any type of real punishment for betraying the unity. I think during apartheid, what the South Africans was doing was, necklacing people, and that was considered a crime, but it did kind of help dissuade you from betraying the people. So I don't know if I want to go that extreme, but there definitely be some consequences.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring this as a separate topic, because I do think there is an issue where we haven't held some of our folks accountable. Yeah, some of those who cooperated ended up on the ships too, but not by our doing. They just were double crossed by the people they were working with. But there were some of those folks who, because remember the whole ADOS thing. Remember how that was born. I did a video on it years ago, but that was born out of an article written in the New York Times, if you remember, where a descendant of one of these sellouts was I was going to say they were bragging, but let me not go that far. They were recounting their family history of how their great-great-grandfather, maybe 3 times great, I can't remember how many greats, but a couple of great-great-grandfathers ago, how he was the money man and how he made himself like a great man in his township or village or what have you, off of the money he acquired selling other Africans in human bondage or subhuman bondage. And one of the things I did ask myself at that time when that article came out, I made all that noise, is, wow, we've never really held those people accountable. Is it because we can't get to those people? Because let's think about it. You go to the club after this show tonight, and you miss and step on the wrong guy's shoe, you could be dealt with tonight. We could be saying RIP to you tomorrow morning. How is it that these families, who are known, by the way, how come these guys never were punished? Were they protected, or did we just not have interest in that kind of retaliation? What are your thoughts Black Seal in the chat.
I mean, how do we know these people? Like, we're talking about something that happened 200, 300, 400 years ago. Like, do we really know these individuals? Like, you said they're known. If they're known, that's one thing. I don't think they're really known like that. I mean, I can't tell you anything about how my ancestors got to be here. That's not something I would know or have access to that information. Yeah, I wouldn't know that information, honestly, Coco, if I'm being honest with you. I do think
I
that
don't think
we know. But back then, I don't know if they were in a position to do anything because those people were probably well protected, and they were probably in a position where there was protection, and they were armed, and they weren't. It's not. I don't think they really knew what was going on and who was doing the damage. I really don't know if we could say that. But I would think now. I think it's not. I think it's a lack of interest. It all goes to our lack of unity, our lack of organization, right? And I think also too, it's the individual. I got mine. You got to get yours type of mentality, right? What do you do with people who have that mentality like that? Like, we have a lot of people who do harm in our communities now, and there's no real large movement to try to check them or do anything about them. I think a part of it is low racial esteem. I think it's a lot of lack of organization. And then the thing about it too is that, say you make a move to hurt these people or do something to somebody, you could be facing charges. You could be the one getting locked up or penalized or being taken away from your family, your loved ones for decades at a time. Not that person. So I think a lot of it is that because we lack power, because we lack organization, and because we lack unity, this is something that is going to continue to plague our people.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think maybe we didn't know. I think we in the diaspora don't necessarily know. I think because that article, I go back to that article. I think in those regions of the continent, they know the families, and they know because the families are the elites now. Like Trigger says, we could start with which elite families in Africa hold power and how much of that power is a holdover of colonial wealth or wealth from the chattelization proxy war of Black people in the region. So I think that's how that's how people now know who was who. But there's something you said I wanted to address that was so true. It just went on my head. Let me read a few more comments. Lord of Slaughter says FBA claims freedmen all the time. He says that freedman name has baggage. I've heard them claim to be traitors. Is it traitors or traitors? Earlier he said the Moors are responsible for his family being enslaved, but that's just his story. He says I've heard all types of stories about how people got here. Trigapi said earlier, he said Black people have a sort of excitement of making Black conditions self-inflicted when it's more nuanced and deeper than what they want to hear. Absolutely. And by no means, when I'm asking these follow-up questions, I don't want people to think I'm just trying to isolate the Black folks who took a part. No. I understand very well how a lot of them came to be in that position. I don't necessarily agree with them accepting that position. In fact, I don't agree with them accepting that position. But I'm aware who the real enemy of it all is. But I do think we need to do some straightening sometimes. And I'll tell you why I said, me and Brother Bakari used to talk about this before. We'll let guys who were, guys and gals, who were big in our, let's say in America, guys who were big in the community through music, through art, through entertainment, etc. We supported them. We this, we that, favorable towards them. And like Black Steel, that's the point that Black Steel made. Nicki Minaj is one of these type of people. Nicki Minaj made her whole thing off of Black folks. And I'm ashamed to say Nicki Minaj is actually Caribbean. She made her whole thing within black music in America, black fan base. I'm not saying she didn't have other people who were fans as well, but largely black folks kind of made her heart. And now look what she's doing. She's rubbing shoulders with these MFers that Charlie Kirk and them was rubbing shoulders with. You know, and I think because we never address those people who benefit, those of our people who benefited from our enslavement and chattelization, I think that's why we allow the Snoop Dogs of the world to get a pass and come back around us and could still make money.
The Kanyes too.
Yep, Kanye West, you know, these types of people, Dr. Dre, all these types of people, right? Because we never instilled that quality within us of, no, we got to go get some straightening done with these people who benefited off of us. Instead, we tend to focus on the petty infractions that go on within our community, and that's when we get this mindset to carry out revenge and this, that, and the other. But we really should deal with those folks. And the important thing, to bring it back to the video, you got to think about it. The folks who made themselves elite, and this is across races, by the way, but the folks who made themselves elite back in the day off of our enslavement and chattelization, they're the ones who are making money today off of our powerlessness, off of our division. It's the same people. It's the same people. That right there that I just described, that is a money machine. If you could help keep the destabilization of, say, the Sahel states or Nigeria or what have you, right, the Caribbean, you are making your coins off of that still today. So the question is, when are we going to start dealing with everyone who we had some issues with? In the chat, Trigger Happy says, we need to do in-house cleaning, basically, and have clear and strong internal cultural consequences, political consequences, and economic consequences. I agree with Lord of Slaughter at Trigger, 100%. 100%. Trigger goes on to say, yeah, it becomes very normalized as if nothing wrong is happening. A bad taste doesn't exist in the mouths of regular people. They think it's okay for this, is her individual ideology. Trigger goes on to say, and even if we feel it is wrong, we know pushback will happen because others will also push back against you. Lastly, Lord Solar says they build nothing to empower us. That's the thing I think we got to get to. And I'm going to put up Trigger's comment from earlier about house cleaning. So this is why I really brought this topic as a separate thing to address the house cleaning thing. But the only way we're going to clean house, to those who can hear my voice, we have to get organized, put aside the petty differences. There's bigger infractions that have been created against us than some guy in a crowded club accidentally stepping on your shoe. There's bigger infractions that some guy from a corner that you don't like, right? He's from Hepburn Alley, you're from Strong's Corner. You don't like him, but he's having a relationship with your sister, a loving relationship, positive, but because he's from the wrong corner, like, that's a problem. We got to do some serious house cleaning, is the point of why I brought the prompt. Black Steel, you have any last thoughts with that said?
No, I think that definitely covers it. But yeah, I think that a part of it is a lot of African people have low racial esteem, right? So when we deal with these traders, right, we don't believe that we deserve the best, right? We don't believe that we deserve loyalty even because we have low racial esteem. But I think that definitely is a part of it, is our low racial esteem.
Sorry, you were cutting out for me, and I didn't realize when you stopped. Yeah, so with that said, man, good comments from the chat. Let's keep those going, because that helps the conversation go, helps me think of follow-up questions as well to ask. Again, we're shorthanded. Our usual guy, Buana, isn't here tonight because he's dealing with a loss in his family. I'll let him tell you guys more about that in the future. But shout out to Buana. I spoke to him via text briefly today, and there's a couple of things going on in terms of loss around Buana. So let's keep him in our African thoughts and spirit. In the meantime, we'll go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 4 tonight. Shoot the Breeze topic number 4 says, have you read any of these, and which ones do you recommend? This takes us right back to YouTube once again. And this is a YouTube video that's titled 10 Books Every Black Person Should Read. So we're going to see how many of them you guys have read. And of the books that you've read, which ones would you recommend? All right, so let's pay attention to this one. Let's have a good conversation to follow up after.
Greetings, brothers and sisters and people of goodwill. Thank you for joining me. When I first had the idea of creating a Facebook page that would center on the history of African people some 11 or so years ago, I didn't do so with the notion that these 10 books that I've listed are the books that we should focus in on exclusively. But as a starting point, in order to catalog the long and storied history of African people. And of course, since then, there have been many books that have been written, some of which I've uploaded, that are in that same vein. Two of them come to mind right away. Robin Walker's When We Ruled, an epic book that I would put right at the top. If I was putting that list out today, that would be one of the 10 that I would have listed. And Manu Ampin's new book, A History of African Civilizations, would be in the mix as well. But there are others. Molefi Asante's A History of Africa. I could go on and on and on and name some of the iconic scholars and researchers that have helped to reclaim and recapture our history and snatch it out of the hands of people that have distorted and have co-opted and robbed us of our historical legacy. The truth be told, we've been blessed with many iconic scholars that have toiled behind the scenes, doing the hard work, not pontificating over a social media keyboard. Scholars like Asa Hilliard, Theophila Obenga, J.A. Rogers, Amos Wilson, Runoko Rashidi, W.E.B. Du Bois, Malana Karenga, and many others. But I gotta confess, reading Robin Walker's When We Ruled and Manu Ampin's book kind of inspired me to go back and revisit some of the books that I've had in my possession that I read 30 or more years ago, because much of the information is rooted in those scholars that put in that hard work. And so I've decided that what I'm going to do is do some book reviews. We live in a time and an era, even though it's the information age, it's also the age of short attention spans and YouTube historians. People do not read to the extent that they used to read or that they should read. And so consequently, what I'm going to do is go back over some of these books. I've already started that, and do some book reviews and keep them in little snippets and vignettes with the hopes that I can inspire other people to visit this information. It could not be more important. There could not be a more important time than right now that we get a firm grasp on our history, because right now there is a concerted effort that is growing to snuff out any attempts for authentic history to be taught in school. We've had enough of the distortions and the half-truths and the omissions that were taught to us when we were in school. There's too much other information out there that is evidence-based that we need to know and that we need to teach our young people what plagues African heritage people, a loss of historical memory. The father of Black History Month, which was called Negro History Week initially, Carter G. Woodson. I'm going to start out with his book, The Miseducation of the Negro. As I was reading that the other day, I'm saying, man, this brother was writing this stuff in 1933. And how is it we are in 2025 still dealing with the same kinds of environment, the same kind of obstacles in our way of learning our true history today as what he wrote about back in 1933. Now, to those who may not be aware of what the original 10 books that I uploaded as part of 10 books every Black person should read were, they are as follows. The Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. I've read that multiple times. I'll go back to it again too. The African Origins of Civilization, Myth or Reality by the great multidisciplinarian scholar Sheikh Anta Diop. The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Black Man of the Nile and His Family by Dr. Yosef Ben Yekinen. Egypt Revisited by Ivan van Sertima. Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust by the master teacher, Dr. John Henrik Clarke. African Civilizations by John G. Jackson. And Exploding the Myths, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Anthony Browder. And I'll close with this quote from scholar Amos Wilson and the Falsification of African Consciousness, 1993. I often say in this regard that if there were not a direct relationship between history and money, a direct relationship between history and power, history and rulership, history and domination, then why is it that the European rewrote history? Why is it that the European wants to rewrite our history and distort it? Why is it he doesn't want to present it at all? Apparently, the rewriting, the distortion, and the stealing of our history must serve vital economic, political, and social functions for the European, or else he would not bother and try so hard to keep our history away from us and to distort it in our own minds.
Very good book list there. This is a good conversation for my co-host tonight, because he's a well-read guy. We used to do, for those who don't know, Black Steel and I used to do a book club one time ago where we used to read these. We used to read books like these and come online here and discuss them. This is how we got to know Anthony McPhail and stuff, through his comments and under the videos that we used to do. I haven't read all of those books that he mentioned. I would like to hear how many you guys in the chat have read and what are your recommendations. But I'll tell you, you don't go wrong with Dr. John Henrik Clarke. That book that he mentioned from Dr. John Henrik Clarke, wonderful piece of writing. He mentioned Robin Walker earlier too. Did you guys see a video for Robin Walker recently where he was talking about, this goes back to the previous Shoot the Breeze topic. He was talking about the Africans who sold Africans into slavery. I thought that was a very interesting, it started off kind of choppy, but it was a very interesting discussion. I'll try to bring it, if I didn't post it on Shoot the Breeze on the Discord, I'll try to bring it in the future. But let me know in the chat if you saw that video, what your thoughts were. But in the meantime, also let me know which books you've read. It seems like Lord of Slaughter has read From Babylon to Timbuktu. Would you Is that one that you suggest everyone read? Lord of Slaughter. Where's Trigger Happy and Lero and everyone else who was here in the chat earlier? What books have you guys read from the list that you would like to put forward? So yeah, Lord of Slaughter is recommending From Babylon to Timbuktu. KW Don 7 read a majority of these books. KW Don 7, man, I'm glad you're here still. Can you just briefly tell us which books you would recommend as I go to Black Steel and ask his thoughts on the video overall, as well as any of the books he might have read from the list? Black Steel would see you.
I think I've read most of those books he mentioned. I don't have the Robin Walker one, but I think I've read most of the books he mentioned. I really like The Miseducation of the Negro. Carter G. Woodson was, in fact, the second Black person to graduate from Harvard University, the first one being W.B. Du Bois. And I like what he said about Black people. He said what did he say? He said Harvard has ruined more Black minds than strong whiskey, right? And it's so funny. Again, he said it's almost 100 years ago. He said that that modern education is truly more damaging than alcoholism, right? I thought that's interesting. But I read most of those books. I enjoy many. I like Stolen Legacy. Um, I liked. I never read Babylon and Timbuktu. And I didn't. Someone recommended it to me. But it seemed too Hebrew Israelitish to me. The Bible is not a history book. I know a lot of people take offense to that, but the Bible is not a history book. So when people start referencing the Bible and biblical passages, my brain shuts off. You know, that's like somebody referencing Amazing Spider-Man 242. It's all fiction in the end. I don't pay that any attention. But if I had to recommend a book, I would recommend Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. It's a history of Black America. And it's something that my mom got from me when I was a kid. And it was a little advanced for me as a child. You know, the 10-year-old, she got it for me. Excuse me. But I go back and I read it a couple times, and it's very good history. And especially in the United States, in this whole right-wing push that we're moving right now, I think that type of history is important because there's a lot of, like his quote he mentioned about Ames Wilson, there's a real concentrated effort to distort our history, right? You got people online saying the most ridiculous things. And partially because I think that many of our young people don't like to read. But also, too, I feel like many Black parents, I'm speaking from as an educator, right? They have basically taken away their responsibility to educate their children, especially their Black children. When I was a kid, we didn't have there was no African American history class that was taught in school. I graduated in 1999. And they started to have African American history as an elective in school, right? But by that point, I was getting ready to graduate. I was ready to be done. So now they do have an African American history course that is taught in like public school. I don't teach it myself. I would like to teach it maybe one day, but I might be too radical to teach that, especially in my state. But I think that when you say, oh, they don't teach in school, you should be the primary educators of your children, not the school. Not the school. The school should help supplement what you teach them at home. And I think that many Black parents have kind of moved away from that responsibility. And I think that if we're relying on the European and public education system to teach our children about African history, they're never going to get the full picture. They're never going to get it. Because you're going to hear about Dr. King, you're going to hear about the Civil Rights Movement, you're going to hear about Frederick Douglass, and that's it, and slavery, and that's it. They're never going to give you a full, comprehensive picture. And that's why books like this are so important, because it gives you a better picture. And it can be used as a curriculum to kind of educate Black children. That's something that as a community, we have basically passed the responsibility of educating our young people on others. And that should never be the case. That should never be the case. And that's why we have so many youth that are come up confused and they don't know what they are. And, they can, if someone on YouTube can say, they can say, oh, Harriet Tubman wasn't real. He's like, yeah, that's right. That's so true. And they can say, oh, slavery didn't happen, or the transatlantic slave trade was a myth, and we're the real Native Americans, and it's all made up. You have people who say these things, and there's people who really believe it. Now, anybody with any type of rudimentary understanding of reality, history, and everything else would know that's all bullshit. But they don't come with that, and we take it for granted that a lot of our people know this stuff. When you have people like that pimp, I don't want to say his name, that high school dropout and that pimp get on here and say the things that he says, and people take it as gospel, right? It's disturbing to me, because I know that when there was a Black History book series that my mom, again, my mother, got me. Matter of fact, it's probably in my son's room. I can go in there and find it. But it was basically like a biography of different Black people throughout history. They had Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Muhammad Ali. Of course, you had Dr. Kings and the Malcolm X's, but it also talked about people like James Baldwin, Ella Fitzgerald, other Black people who Fannie Lou Hamer, who weren't necessarily in the history book. And it was a collection of books that you probably can't even get access to anymore. But a lot of misinformation is being spread. And then also too, you got to worry about literacy. Not just that they read books, but do they know how to read? Because of the social media, and I'm getting off topic a little bit, but the phones and everything else, and the dopamine hit that you get when you go on your phone, a lot of times the ability to sit down and engage with the text and study and ask questions, these skills are not as prevalent as they should be, right? And then you get a lot of, I'm not reading all that, I'm not looking at all that. When it's easy to pick up your phone and type in something in the internet, and you put in the algorithm and you get a million hits. But the idea that when you sit down, you want to engage the text, go over the point, and then read another book. One of my favorite things about reading a book sometimes is that it'll direct you to another book. So as I was reading Columbus de Castro by Williams, and I was reading that book, and then as I was reading that gave me a desire to read more about the Haitian Revolution. So then I picked up Avengers of the New World. I picked up the Black Jacobins. I picked up more of these books, his knowledge. It allowed me to build on that. And I think that skill is being lost. I think, a lot of these books I recommend. I mentioned Columbus de Castro. You better make me go to my bookshelf, man. The Autobiography of Malcolm X. The Wretched of the Earth by Franz Fanon. There's another book here that I really, The New Jim Crow. I'm looking at my bookshelf now. What else? There's another book by Sheikh Anta Diop called, he mentioned African Civilization by Sheikh Anta Diop. Another one he talks about is Pre-Colonial Black Africa, which is a good one. What is that over there? Autobiography of Malcolm X is probably my favorite book. We read King Leopold's Ghost, which was an excellent book. Many of the biography by Assata Shakur, highly recommend. I know we talk about Malcolm X's autobiography, but Assata Shakur's biography is very, very good. I would put almost on par with Malcolm's autobiography. Anybody in the chat want to add some stuff? But there's one more book, Sundown Town. This book was written by a white author. He recently passed away, but he talked about the prevalence of sundown towns, or basically, for those listening, those areas within the United States where a Black person could not be found in past sundown. And I was surprised to see how many areas that I lived in my home state that were sundown towns. But kind of the whole institution of redlining and things like that kind of helped create some of the economic disparities we see in the Black community in America. So those are some books I would recommend, but I'm interested in seeing what some people in the chat or what you, Koku, might recommend also.
Yeah, so you told a story, you told a personal story of with your mom, and it made me think of my dad. As I told you guys the last time we were on here, my dad was a Gaviite. And when I was like, what was I, 12, 13, my dad hands me a book about as thick as a Bible that the title starts with the in-depth analysis, ... of Marcus Garvey. And I'll tell you, like Black Steel said, it was a little too heavy for my age. I'm going to be honest. I used to have to duck him a little bit when I would talk to him, and he would ask me about the book. But here's the importance of him having handed that book to me at that age. The importance is that I never forgot this Marcus Garvey. And when I started to become more inquisitive about what this Black life really is about, what does it mean, where are we at, where are we going, I went back and I did my learning on Marcus Garvey, which made me a Garveyite. So it's important, like Brother Bakari said in the chat, and echoing what Black Steel said here on the panel, education starts at home. And you'll be surprised to see what bit of work, what bit of even pleasure, whatever it is that you have on display in your home. You'll be shocked to see how that catches on with children. You'll never believe it caught on with them. I've talked about it here before. One of my guilty pleasure shows is a show called Doctor Who. I'm a big sci-fi person. And because I'm so into that, my oldest son, one of the things that we bond over heavy is this show, Doctor Who. And some other things, even in terms of consciousness, because they were around it. And so I think that was a good thing that what Black Steel's mom had done, even though it might have been above his weight class at the time, I'm sure it helped guide Black Steel to be the person and as well as the educator that he is today. There was another thing I was going to say about a book, and I forgot it now. But the other thing I wanted to ask the crew, and I'm going to read off some of your book recommendations in a second, but I've never read this book on screen here, Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson. Has anyone else here read it in the chat? Is that a good book to understand some of the early cultural connections between African civilizations? You guys let me know. Going back to the comments here, Trigger Happy says, I feel like Job has to be reread and reread and reread because his project should be the basis to which we build cultural unity. I don't think I read that Babylon to Timbuktu. KW Don 7 says every Black person globally should be forced to read The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Great book. Great book. Trigger says it will require the parents to also be strongly educated too, which means they have to take time to be well read and fully refine their consciousness to give their children a foundation. Yeah, that comment there echoes within me. That echoes within me. And I'm sure probably with Black Steel as well, based on his previous stories. Sister Ross says all of them recommend Black men, obsolete, single, dangerous. The African American Family in Transition by Hekir Mad Hubuti. Is Mad Hubuti still alive? I feel like I saw a mention of him in a movie or something recently, or a mention of the work that they did in Chicago in terms of African-centered education. And it dawned on me to ask that question: is he still alive? Maybe Sister Raw might know. By the way, Tariq Nasheed, the one who otherwise isn't mentioned on the show, he lost his lawsuit against Taharka Bay. That was good to hear. Trigger also says, this is why I say we had this discussion on technology and human activity. We have to balance making sure we don't have an over-reliance of technology. We have to build human activity first. He goes on to say, build our strong human activity first, and then add the use of technology as assistance, as opposed to the reliance of advanced technology. I could get down with that. Trigger happy. Trigger says the first memories of a child become the long-lasting developments of a person. Well said. Lastly, Lord of Slaughter says next week has to be topic, should be topic, why white people never see themselves as the villain in the movies they love, like Avatar. Lords of Slaughter, if you haven't already, I think you did, but join the Discord. The link is in the description. Navigate yourself to the Shoot the Breeze topics channel and post that up and add a video or something to it. That will be a good kind of discussion, especially to open up the new year, 2026. We should be live next week, by the way. So do make your way back to this channel. I just want to echo many of the books that Black Steel would have mentioned. Yes, when I was telling the story about my dad earlier, the other story I wanted to add to that was I had a cousin. He was an older gentleman. He was a writer. He lived out here in San Francisco. On one of his trips back home, he brought home, and I'm curious to know if any of you are familiar with it. He brought back home these comic books. They were part of a series, like a Black history series or something. And these comic books will talk about the life of like Frederick Douglass. That's how I learned about Frederick Douglass the first time. Or they'll talk about the fact that they were Black cowboys, but it was in comic book form. And I remember I had a grandfather who was a strict guy, man, and he didn't like things like comic books and stuff like that. So he was gonna, he would tear shit like that up. And he saw it, and my older cousin had to tell him, no, uncle, that's those are educational comic books. So I say that to also say that we as Black folks need to also invest in creating media that reaches the audience that we want to get. I think that comic book space, graphic novels, imagine, it's something I think about, man. Imagine you write a graphic novel, you do your research, and you bring back all of the old Africanisms of the average West African before the Ma'afa. But you tell a story where they use these elements of their culture to help drive their purpose or what have you through this story. I think you could get to so many people that way at a younger age too. So I just want to put that out there for you guys to just to hear it, because maybe you're a writer or you know someone who's a writer. Try to get in that space. KW Don also mentions this group here that does audiobooks. And Buana, if he was here, he would mention that too. If you don't have time to sit and physically hold a book and read it, you can tune into audiobooks. That's kind of what Black Steel and I was doing. Well, or at least people was asking us to do it, to just sit down and read the book. But we were actually giving commentary and reading certain parts that we found interesting of discussion. But yeah, I just want to encourage that, man. Let's also we ain't got to reinvent the wheel. Let's utilize what's out there already, and let's move into some of these spaces, like the guy, as Lord of Slaughter points out, the guy from Black Sands. The guy from Black Sands was at New York Comic Con this year, and my lady bought all of his books. You know, that's the kind of thing. Again, these are comic books or graphic novels, or, compendiums of comics, and we should really be trying to get into that. I watched this video maybe 2 months ago. African guy was breaking down how you could use AI now to make your own Pixar films. And I really, in 2026, I hope to be able to carve out the time to do something like that, even if it's just a 2-minute thing, but it'll be something that it can show our people we can get into these other ways of transmitting knowledge and technology and imagery and stuff like that. I just want to put that out there, man. Those two things. So that YouTube channel with the audiobooks, Examine Info, check that out. Check out the guy from Black Sands Comics. Sister Ross says, only we body dies, our spirit lives on. The ancestors can guide you, lead you, and protect you, but you have to be in tune with them. And that goes back to African spirituality. I think a big reason why we're not really getting into our African spirituality like we should is, of course, the powers that be is not going to create the movies that are going to connect you to that. And we're not doing it. And once we keep working with these people, we're not going to be allowed to do that in their Hollywood. We're not necessarily writing the stories. I mean, we have some good writers now. Let's not get it wrong. Octavia Butler and stuff like that. And I forgot her name now. The other sister who's kind of following in the steps of Octavia. Damn it, I can't think of her name. But we have to get behind these things ourselves. We could start small too. They didn't build Rome in a day. You know what I mean? But we gotta, like some of these books, even believe it or not, on the other side of the aisle, some of these types of books, guys turn them into graphic novels. Guys turn them into like little cartoon movies and all kind of stuff. Like, believe it or not. So we should try to do the similar. I know I've run on here a lot about this, but I just wanted to get those 2 stories out and my overall thought on that. Black Steel, is there any last thoughts from you?
No, I'm good.
All right. Oh, yes. Thank you for that. I can't believe I forgot that. This is the last word on this prompt. The sister, the revolutionary matron. I haven't been able to tune in lately because of what's been going on. But the matron comes on here about 3 times a week on her channel, and she reads books for you. She reads books for you. She might add a little commentary, but she doesn't even do too much of that. She reads these books. She does them live. You guys, please join the live streams when she does this. Please support her. through her Cash App and what have you, but she does a good job of it, and she's willing to have conversations with people after most of her readings. I know that she'll drop the link for you to join her. She should be getting more of our attention. Our children should be directed to her as well. So I thank you, Sister Raw, for reminding me. Last but not least, but Lord of Slaughter says Historia Africana has good AI videos, so check them out as well. Let's go to Shoot the Breeze, topic number 5. This is gonna be the last topic for the night. Shoot the Breeze, topic number 5 says, "We are the gods of the earth. Our ancient knowledge and mysticism is parallel to no other people or culture." This takes us to a tweet, that'll be Twitter, from Zoom Africa. It says, "Our culture, our pride, our identity." This is a short video, so I'm going to play it twice so that we get a good idea of what is being shown to us. Let's see if there's any more to this as well. Now, a couple of jokes and whatnot, but I'll be curious to know where this is. I remember Zuli telling me, I think it was Zuli who told me he saw this in Haiti in person one time. Very interesting stuff. Our mysticism is parallel to no other people or culture. This is what I'm saying. There's a story in here. There's a great visual story to be told here that could capture the fancy and imagination of our children. Who is this man who could sit in fire? You know, what is the basis of this? And man, it just takes the resources to get this stuff done, you know. But yeah, there's a story here, and our mysticism is parallel to none. Here's the thing too. You get to see, even in today's time, you can see instances of our mysticism still. But most of these other people, like if you ever used to read some of them European stories based on their culture and all that kind of stuff, you don't see the defeats or whatever nowadays. There's no one capturing that anywhere. But you can still see people in Africa jumping crazy heights up in the sky, or sitting in fire, or putting coals in their mouth and not getting burnt, or handling wild animals and not being killed. It's a very interesting thing. So I appreciate the poster for this, and that little message at the end that says our mysticism is parallel to no other people or culture, because you really don't see it. I mean, you guys tell me if you see any of their mysticism. And I ain't talking about the bullshit tiger shows and that type of shit that they do. I'm talking about like a real feat. Black Seal, what are your thoughts on all of it?
I mean, it's obviously the power of the devil, man. I don't know what you're talking about. This is obvious witchcraft. What we seeing right now, man. You know, we should burn them at the stake, but no. In all seriousness, um, that is fascinating to see. And when you see stuff like that, it's hard to, you know, we live in a society that is so grounded in science and so on and so forth, and natural laws and physics and whatnot. When you see something like that, there's so many questions. Like, okay, how, what? Like, is this real? Is this something that's manufactured off of social? Are we looking at a AI, or is this, you know? There's so many. To me, in my thought, I have so many questions looking at that. Like, where, how, what, why did this even come to pass? Like, and it just goes to show that we are powerful people. But then, how did we get in this position then? You know, how is it that we possess such abilities, but yet our people are so subjugated? And you know, what's the use of having power if it can't be used to help your people? And you know, I don't know. I got questions. I got more questions. I got answers. Honestly, Koku, I got to be honest with you. Like, he just sitting in the fire. Like, what is the purpose of him sitting in the fire? Like, what does he get from doing this? Like, what's he benefiting from this? Like, how is this helping him as an African person? Like, I got questions, man. I'm really confused and in awe of the whole situation, of the whole information that I'm seeing here. It is truly magnificent to see something like this, and I don't expect any type of rational answer, but I don't know. I'm just really in awe of the whole thing. Truly, I am.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts there.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you there. Yeah, that's the thing. Again, I go back to that previous prompt about the books. You know, I should be able to go and grab a book right now and be able to like research this, and if I didn't feel to take a heavy approach to the understanding, I want a lighter one. Some storybooks should have been out there. Like, you know, we talked about Carter G. Woodson earlier. One of Carter G. Woodson's greatest books that's hardly ever discussed is a book of African children's stories. One of his greatest works is a book of African children's stories. Before I started doing Shoot the Breeze on Saturdays I used to read stories and fables and stuff like that. And Carter G. Woodson's book was like a go-to for that. You know what I mean? And this is the guy who wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, there's too much that we have that's good, which kind of goes back to Trigger Happy's earlier point about human activity. We got so much interest in shit going on, not only the things that overlap and connect us, but the things that are a little bit different. That we could really learn so much from. You know, just from the human activity. We supposed to be writing what's it called again? Not telenovelas, but anyway, we supposed to be writing audio stories, books and comics and putting up cartoons and things of that nature. But we're waiting for someone else to do it, and we're not putting ourselves in a position which will require to have some technological understanding. We're not putting ourselves in a position to really get this stuff out to the people. In the chat, Lord of Soda says, we are a combination of the elements that make up the earth itself. Sister Ross says, so true. Them Caucasoids has brainwashed most of us and put into us what they want us to be. A lot of sources says the guy causing the lake to recede from the bank. So is that true? A white guy caused the lakes to recede from the banks, and that was captured on video? Because again, me personally, maybe I'm just on the right algorithms. I don't see any big feats from them. You know what I mean? But you'll always see something out of Africa. A lot of sources says I had a guy talk the fire out after burning both my hands. Pain stopped immediately and no scars. That's interesting. Guy talked the burning out of your hands. That's interesting. You know, first-hand knowledge, first-hand experience, right? Tragapi says we can rattle on about the same reasons that we mentioned over and over again, but I think a lot about how libraries get burnt and destroyed as the basis of our spiritual culture being reduced. That's a good point. He says colonization, destroying artifacts or stealing them is a very important detail. Even when we discuss the African presence in the Americas, they destroyed indigenous libraries. That's a good point. So that's another thing on our list. We could create the stories, the books, the knowledge, but we got to protect it as well, right? Oh no, so a lot of sort of corrects me. He says an African guy caused the water to recede. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You don't see this. Again, maybe I'm in the wrong, or maybe I'm in the right algorithms and I don't see their stuff, but you don't see it, man. Black Seal, there's no other thoughts. That's our last topic for the night. But before you go, of course, I'd like to do what I customarily do at the end of every show. But before, Black Seal, just to make sure, do you have any last thoughts on anything that we discussed tonight?
I want to know some books that you should stay away from. We always talk about books you should recommend. What's a book you've read and you don't recommend? I say a book I read I don't recommend is The 48 Laws of Power. I do not recommend that book. But I would like to know some books that I should stay away from.
That's a good question. That's a very, very good question. What have and of course we're talking about Black books, right? Or just books in general?
Of course, we talk about African books, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I might say Neely Fuller's book is one I would stay away from because it really is not aimed at making you a powerful person or powerful minded person. It really just makes you kind of maintain the hegemony over us, maintains our position, and it just kind of guides you on how to kind of get through without being damaged, so to speak. Probably Neely Fuller's.
I like that. I've never read the whole thing, but okay, I'll keep that in mind. Because it's not a cheap book to get. I can save a few dollars.
You're right. Yeah, I happen to read it. I think it's on the Discord actually in the bookshelf as a PDF. I think someone around KWAZ Radio had it and passed it on to me. But it's like a $40-$50 book. And it's a book just telling you how to basically don't cause no ruckus, and not just how to get through, kind of lay down type of thing. I would suggest that. I'm sure I have others in my head that I've read.
Anything by Thomas Sowell, which you should avoid the play. Anything by Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell should be avoided.
Anything by him should be avoided.
Yeah, that's a good pull. Thomas Sowell is a good pull. There was a time where I would have suggested to sometimes read a person like Thomas Sowell so you could understand and defeat those talking points when they come up, but I think it's better to just avoid it. Just avoid it completely. Trigger Happy says he can't think of any because there have been many books people tell me to stay away from. Certain ideological groups will make books, and I will just stay away from those works. A lot of slaughter says Thomas is a Thomas. Let's welcome in Brother Bakari, man. Brother Bakari, you came at the end, but what say you this week?
What's going on, man? I know I came at the end because I've been in and out. I've been in and out. I just came in here. What's going on, Black Steel?
How you doing, Bakari? Good to
What's
see you.
going on to? Yeah, man. Good to hear from y'all, man. I just coming on here. So you just giving a shout out. Shout out to you. Glad to know you're holding up. Good. And I want to tell everybody, if y'all don't know, man, if y'all have a way, if y'all have a one on WhatsApp, reach out to the brother. His mama passed away, and talk to him. He says best you reach him in the evening time, but if you can, you got a way to talk to him. Y'all should reach out to the brother and
Yeah,
check on him.
that's
Make sure he all right, because he been drinking a lot of white rum. So you check on him, make sure he all right.
Yeah. I appreciate that because I texted him this morning. You know, that's what happened to Buana, and he also had a friend who had a child who died, I think yesterday too. So tough time.
Sorry.
Tough time.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But Bakari, before I go to the shout outs, man, real quick, what books would you suggest Black folks to read and not read?
One thing, you don't read anything. Y'all already said Neely Fuller Jr., but anything Dwight York wrote. That they call it Malachi York from the New Wabians. Don't read none of that. That's what I would say, though. None of that New Wabian stuff, man. They gonna have you out there. But you know, I mentioned, let me see, the Miseducation of the Negro, from slavery. Those are books I read. I've read Destruction of Black Civilization. Oh man. There's a few I would suggest. And one I don't, that I tell people, that one I recommend is few, but the ones I won't recommend is the stuff by Malachi York.
I never considered that. That man's a whole. Yeah, I never considered that. You're right.
Yeah, I was gonna say earlier, stay away from any religious type text, but I kind of just let it be. But yeah, the Malachi Z. York stuff. And by the way, I read that book. He has a big, heavy book. I forgot the name of it now. And I read that because back then I was interested in different spiritualities and trying to connect with something. And so someone suggested that book. I read it, and it was so out there. I just never went back to it. Never even thought about the guy again after I read that.
The only reason, because I've never read, but I knew. I used to live up the street from some New Wapians, and oh my God, they were out there, man. I'm talking about this in the last like 5-6 years, and they were out there, bro. Malachi, y'all ain't never done nothing wrong. Read this book, read that book, read. I'm like, man, I don't want to read none of that book. I say, this is what got y'all. Yeah, man, this is what that knowledge at. Man, I ain't reading that book.
One book I would recommend is not necessarily a Black book, but it is a book that if we're talking about warfare, right, with our enemy, right, the Turner Diaries. That is the white supremacist handbook. They created like some sort of diary about how they want to take over the world, and I think it's important to understand how your enemy thinks. It is a terrible book, but I think it's a benefit because it helps us understand the hatred they have for not only for us, but for them too. So I think it's a good learning experience just to learn who your enemy is and what they want to do to you.
Yeah, and what they fantasize about. That book.
What's the name of that book again, Black Steel?
The Turner Diaries.
The Turner Diaries. Okay.
Yeah. The dude who blew up the Oklahoma City building, Timothy McVeigh. Um, that was like his main. A lot of neo Nazis, white supremacist organization. That's like their Bible.
Yeah.
You know that's a good recommendation because you're right. If we out here talking about fighting our enemies, right? In every way, we do. You have to know what the enemy is thinking. So that's a good recommendation. The Turner Diaries.
The Turner Diaries used to be on a website. I remember reading it on a website. It was kind of oddly formatted, but you could make your way through it. I don't know if the website is still up now, but you guys could do a Google search and see if you find the Turner Diaries online. You might even find a PDF of it now because it was so out there, especially late 90s, early 2000s. It was really out there. Early 2000s, it was really out there a lot. So you could probably find a website with it. Bakari, a lot of slaughters asking, do y'all have fire talkers in Mississippi?
No, I would say not that I know of. I don't know what I don't know what a fire talk is. I can tell you what we did talk about growing up. Hanks. You saw that movie Sinners, and they were talking about, and I'm probably saying it wrong. We called them Hanks, but we saw those are Hanks right there all the time. We talked about that, but I don't know about the fire talkers.
Okay. I'm not even sure what fire talkers are. Do you know what fire talkers are, Black Steel?
Well, from the context, I'm assuming that's what the people who walk in the fire are called. That's what I would think. That's what I think those people are. That's what they call them, fire talkers. You know.
Oh, okay. All right. With that said, man, let's get to the shout outs. Black Steel, you've been here. What would you like to shout out this week?
Well, there's a lot of loss going around. So, shout out to everybody who lost somebody. I know losing people around the holidays especially can be really hard. So shout out to everyone who lost a loved one. Shout out to the show, Koku. I know it's end of the year. 2025 is rough. 2026 probably gonna be a little bit rougher. But I'm here as long as you guys are.
Appreciate that, Black Steel. But Bakari, what would you like to shout out this week?
I want to shout you out, man, for being strong enough to be here, man. I want to shout out Bawana. He's not here, but I understand why he's not here. Shout out to your chat, man. You ain't been in a couple weeks, and they still here. They still here for you. They still came back. So shout out to the real ones who understand what we're talking about on here. Yeah, let me give a shout out to my big cousin Roger. We call him Babby, man. He just passed away. I guess a week or two ago. So let me give a shout out to my big cousin who ain't no longer with me. But that's it, man.
Shout out to big cousin Roger, man. R.I.P. to him. I was gonna be my shout out too, actually. The chat and the people who came back in this YouTube space. If you're gone for any length of time, it really destroys whatever regulars you have. And to have been gone for a few weeks now and a little inconsistent the last 6 months, or inconsistent at times, for you guys to still be coming through is really big time. Like I said, I'm going to start building that email list in the new year so that emails can be sent to people with updates, because the algorithms on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, they're not going to do it for us. So we gotta go back old school, I think, where it's just a click of a mouse to forward an email to a chain of people, and you guys fought it to your own chains of people. So I want to shout you guys out for being here and sticking around. Trigger Happy says, shout outs to Ibrahim Traore, become the new leader of the AES. Lord of Slaughter, when he talked about fire talkers, he was referring to the griots, like the guy who spoke fire out of his hands. Afro Native World is in the chat. Shout out to you. He says, shout out to all black folks staying black and seeking real reconnection with BB Man, which is African heritage. So shout out to all of you guys, man. We'll be back. We'll bring in, well, we won't bring it in, but we'll see each other early in the new year. I'll see you guys next Saturday. In the meantime, you guys check out all the other shows on KWAZ Radio, and I'll see you guys when I see you. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.